This is the South Carolina versus Texas game. Watch this. You see the cop runs into the players coming out of the tunnel and then try to give some shit about it. Let's look. Number 27 actually tries to get out of the way of the cop and let him through, but he still charges both of them. Boom, boom. And then he turns around and looks at them as if they did something wrong. Like, you don't see us coming out of the tunnel. This situation is about us playing, not you ego tripping, right?
Ain't shit funny about this. This is actually really, really scary and traumatizing. The context of this is one of these players had just scored an 80-yard touchdown. He had just caught a ball for an 80-yard touchdown, which means he made a really big play, right? And then he goes to grab his leg and runs back to the locker room with one of his teammates. And as they're walking back onto the field, this state trooper runs into them on purpose. I'm not quite understanding who he felt like in this moment or what led him to do that, but I do know that it is very dangerous to have a man like this carrying around a gun and supposed to be protecting the people at that game when one of the players in uniform walks past him and he treats him like this. I don't know if the racism came over his body and he had a war flashback or something. I don't know if there's something wrong with him mentally, but this shit is weird. Because if a state trooper is going to act like this at a college football game on the job in his uniform to players in their uniforms in front of thousands of people and thousands of cameras, I can only imagine what he's like in private.
This cop clearly wanted to fight, and the abuse of power was caught in 4K. How do you create a whole scene out of thin air? Sir, you walked into them. And you could just tell he's one of those dudes who still brags about playing football in high school, even though he was probably a walk-on long snapper whose biggest stat was perfect attendance. But get this, Texas A&M released a statement and this man was already relieved of his duties and sent home. Texas DPS and the Inspector General are now investigating. All that tough guy energy just to get benched by your own department. If this is how he acts with cameras rolling in front of 80,000 people, just imagine how he acts at a traffic stop in Texas.
State trooper, I'm so glad that they sent his tail home good. You know what I'm saying? And you know what else I'm glad for? I'm glad that they have cell phones. Because imagine if we didn't have cell phones to see how people act. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it had a state trooper where this football player was coming out. And some kind of way they kind of like bumped into each other. But he went to a whole different like mean type of level. You know what I'm saying? What you was going to do? Throw him down and put him in handcuffs? Like, it's so uncalled for. I don't know what's going on with these cops, but some of them don't need to be troopers, police, state troopers. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Why they so cocky and so mean? I understand you have a job to do, but just looking at that video, I'm like, come on, bro, it's not even that serious. You know, and I'm glad that, you know, the dude just kind of just went about his business instead of getting yourself in trouble. Some stuff you do have to ignore.
Does this officer have a name? I sure would like to make him famous. That occurred yesterday, November 15th, at the Texas A&M South Carolina Gamecocks football game. And that's a Texas State Trooper who pretty much decides to throw a shoulder at wide receiver Nick Harbor after scoring an 80-yard touchdown and pulling up gimp after what appeared to be a hamstring injury. That officer was relieved of his duties at the game shortly after that incident because it was in front of 80,000 people and a live TV audience. Relieved of his responsibilities at that game that day, not relieved of his responsibilities that he has sworn to uphold, protect, and defend out there. So I got a question for you. If he's going to act like that in front of 80,000 people and a live TV audience, how do you think he's acting out there?
That Texas trooper, who you feeling like? I know I may be late on the topic, but baby, I'm always on time. Response to that, I saw a lawyer on here say he wants that officer charged with assault and battery, but baby, why stop there? Texas has a whole menu. We can add on to it. Let's talk about official oppression. Texas Penal Code 39.03, that's when a public servant uses their authority to mistreat, threaten, intimidate, or interfere with someone's movement without any legal basis. So stepping into a tunnel to flex on some students, yeah, that could work. Let's talk about abuse of official capacity. That's Texas Penal Code 39.02. That's when an officer misuses their government position or authority. If you are using your badge to flex instead of protect, that's misuse. Let's talk about disorderly conduct. Texas Penal Code 42.01, threatening or aggressive behavior in a public place that could start a conflict. That tunnel was filled with players, staff, cameras, and you're out here creating unnecessary tension. That might fit the description, and I really don't know why you chose that moment to bow up on literal students who are just playing the game. And God forbid one of those students had turned around and shoulder checked you back, because we could be looking at a tragedy on our hands, all because you wanted to be a jerk.
This is a no-brainer to me. It's an automatic suspension. The man shouldn't be allowed to work the game again. What you doing messing with a player like that for?
Hello guys, and welcome to the Joe Report, where we get an outsider's view with an insider's clarity. If you watched the Texas A&M game this weekend, or you happen to catch clips on it on TikTok, you probably saw one of the most baffling, aggressive, and downright embarrassing moments to come out of college football this year. A Texas State trooper, fully uniformed, fully in control of the space, walked straight into South Carolina players heading up the tunnel, made shoulder-to-shoulder contact with them, and then whipped around like they had just committed a crime. He pointed, shouted, postured, and escalated a situation that he, on camera, very clearly caused. And that single moment, broadcast live on ESPN, exploded across social media within minutes because everyone watching had the same question. How does someone bump into you and then act like you did something wrong? Before we proceed, all credit goes to the creators of these videos. You'll find their ads in my description box. But for now, let's watch a few more videos and I'll be back with more commentary.
First off, I think these two guys did part ways so that he could squeeze through. I think it's truly insulting that he comes after him, pointing his finger at them, blaming them for the contact that he caused. But what's truly alarming to me is thinking of this man out there on the street when there's not a college football game going on, when there's two men who are walking and he makes contact with, and we know that the story can't be that it was incidental. It's somebody's fault. You see, he's pointing at them. He's telling them it's their fault. And if it's their fault, and he says his shoulder hurts, guess what that is in the state of Texas? That's assault on a peace officer. That's a serious felony. And in a world where there's not always cameras, there's not always a game going on, these guys end up arrested for a felony in the state of Texas, where he's saying they were in a restricted area. He went to go see what was going on. They shoulder checked him, causing his shoulder pain. They're both arrested for felony assault. And now it's his probable cause statement, his little write-up against their word against his. And they're telling their defense attorney, he hit us. And the defense attorney is saying that's not how he painted the picture.
We have an update on the Texas State trooper who came under a ton of fire on Saturday after bumping South Carolina players in the tunnel at Texas A&M. The incident made national waves, with people like LeBron James even chiming in, saying that he needs to be suspended. The good news, he was immediately removed from his post and from the stadium. Moreover, the Texas Department of Public Safety released a statement saying that after he was sent home, they will be investigating the matter further. South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer said he wasn't aware of the incident in real time, but did thank Texas A&M for acting quickly.
I've got a ton of respect for the people here in College Station. It's a first-class operation. Everybody from a game operations standpoint, they do a great job.
Good on Texas A&M for acting so quickly, but this man shouldn't be allowed near Kyle Field ever again.
When the clip started circulating, nobody needed slow motion replays or deep analysis to understand what they were looking at. The trooper didn't get pushed. The trooper didn't get crowded. He wasn't protecting players, coaches, or anyone else. He was standing in a walkway, made contact with South Carolina's Nick Haber and another teammate, Oscar Adaway, and then turned the energy all the way up for no reason. Haber had just scored an 80-yard touchdown, a huge momentum, adrenaline high, teammates following him back toward their sideline, and the last thing anyone expected was a confrontation with law enforcement. But that's exactly what happened. 1 second they're walking, the next second the trooper steps forward, jabs a finger at him, and starts backing like they'd crossed some invisible line. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a chaotic moment where things are moving too fast to interpret. The video shows a calm walkway, players doing exactly what players do, and an officer inserting aggression into a situation that didn't call for it. And when the public saw that, the reaction was immediate. Comments poured in across TikTok, people replaying the clip, zooming in, slowing it down, and asking why an officer was behaving like someone who got caught up in the heat of the game rather than someone tasked with keeping it safe. A lot of viewers pointed out how quickly he snapped. Others focused on the optics, a white trooper aggressively confronting black athletes over a moment he initiated, no context needed. The visuals said everything. Rest became an unavoidable part of this conversation because the visual dynamic is impossible to ignore. A white state trooper aggressively confronting two young black athletes over contact he clearly initiated. For many viewers, this moment echoed a long, painful pattern in America where black men are treated with suspicion, hostility, or force in situations that don't warrant any of it. The body language, the finger pointing, the instant escalation, it all tapped into a familiar history of authority reacting differently to black bodies, even when those bodies are simply walking in the right place at the wrong time. That's why the clip struck such a nerve. People weren't just seeing a sideline dispute. They were seeing a reflection of something much bigger. The backlash grew so fast that Texas A&M officials had to respond the same day. The trooper was relieved of his game day assignment, which is a polite way of saying you're not coming back on the sideline right now. And then Texas GPS took it further. They announced that their office of the Inspector General would open a formal investigation into the trooper's conduct, a step that doesn't happen unless the agency believes there's something serious to examine. This is not the kind of incident they brush off with a quick apology and press release. When your internal watchdog gets involved, it means the department itself sees potential misconduct, and it didn't stop at official statements. The national spotlight hit almost instantly. Even LeBron James weighed in, calling for the trooper's suspension and saying the behavior looked intentional, not accidental. When one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet publicly calls you out, you know the moment has gone well beyond a sports clip. This moved into a bigger conversation: authority, professionalism, race, and how people in power behave when they think no one is paying attention, even though millions were. Because the truth is, this moment is about more than football. It's about power dynamics playing out in real time. A law enforcement officer in uniform made unnecessary contact with athletes and then used his authority to escalate instead of de-escalate. That's the kind of behavior that gets people hurt in different contexts. And while no one got physically harmed here, the pattern, the instinct, the posture is exactly what people have been pointing out for years in conversation about policing culture. You can see it in the body language. You can see it in the tone. You can see it in the way the trooper squared up, as if being bumped in a crowd was a personal challenge rather than an everyday occurrence at a stadium tunnel. And let's be real, if the players had reacted even slightly, verbally, physically, anything, this could have turned into a different headline entirely. That's why people care. That's why people are angry, because athletes shouldn't have to think about what happens if they respond to someone else's aggression, especially when the aggression comes from someone carrying a badge. This moment has now sparked a wider conversation online about why officers are positioned so close to players, what training they receive for non-criminal, high-intensity environments like stadiums, and whether police presence at sports events should be re-evaluated altogether. It also raises questions about accountability. Pulling him from the sideline is one thing, but will DPS release the investigation results? Will there be discipline? Will policy change? Or will this be another viral moment that disappears without consequences? Because moments like this don't happen in isolation. They reflect the culture they come from. And the reason this clip hits so hard is because people instantly recognize what they were seeing. Not an accident, not a misunderstanding, but an unnecessary display of authority aimed at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. The athletes kept walking, but the internet didn't.
So news came out that the officer that was basically responsible for assaulting Nick Harbor, his punishment is going to be to work no more college football games. That's not enough. You don't need a guy like that on the force because he tried to use excessive force. We don't even allow fans to cross the threshold when an athlete is in the heat of the moment. Anything can happen. That officer came at Nick and it could have easily went down. And oh my goodness, it would have been bad. So they need this guy off the force,
So what do you all think? Should the trooper face real disciplinary action? And what does a moment like this say about authority and accountability in sports and beyond? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would love to keep this discussion going. Otherwise, that's it from me. I also have another video specifically tailored for you. And if you enjoy such kind of content, please click up here and enjoy. Also, consider subscribing, liking and sharing because it helps me grow my channel and helps YouTube recommend this video to a wider audience. Lastly, kindly consider joining my channel and I will really appreciate it. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, the Joy Report out.